Hello and welcome to Ted's Library. This is the video series where I'm Ted, takes you through my library. It's not a very big library, and my whole thing is that I don't have a whole lot of space. So if I read a book and I don't like it, I get rid of it. And this is the books that I've heard a lot about and I'm very interested in reading, and I managed to pick up for very cheap. That's one of my rules for Ted's Library. The books have to be very, very cheap to acquire. And so the way that I usually pick up books in like a book haul is I'll go to Goodwill and I'll just look through the books. Sometimes you get nice little gems, and these books that I'm going to talk about today are some of those gems. Today's episode, Anthologies. What do I mean by anthologies? Well, I mean books that are single volumes that contain many different works. And it doesn't have to be many, but more than one different work. There's different categories of these. Before we get into the ones that I picked up for a fairly cheap cost, I'm going to talk about this book, which is Kurt Vonnegut, some 3 complete novels. It includes Cat's Cradle, God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, and Breakfast of Champions. Make sure the light doesn't get it all crazy. I've had this book for quite a bit, and I really am a fan of Vonnegut. I've read Slaughterhouse-Five and Galapagos. I was a huge fan of Galapagos when I finished it. And, it's been a little bit, but that's a very interesting book, and I can't wait to... I know that Cat's Cradle is a huge one. If you have any more Kurt Vonnegut recommendations, leave them in the comments. On to the next book. Tales of the Dying Earth by Jack Vance. This is a collection of the 4 Dying Earth books that were released in the 50s and the 80s, I believe. I don't have a whole... Let me look at the copyright page. Dying Earth, 1950. Eyes of the Overworld, 1966. Kugel's Saga, 1983. And Rialto, the Marvelous, 1984. If I'm not mistaken, this is a huge inspiration for the entire genre, or it may have, in fact, created the genre of the Dying Earth. Fantasy, sci-fi, not necessarily... A lot of my favorite books kind of blend the two, sci-fi, fantasy, but this is a huge inspiration for Shadow the Torturer, Book of the New Sun, and Broken Earth. Boom, 5th season, N.K. Jemisin, Broken Earth. So... I'm really interested in these. They're kind of short. I'll probably just rip through this whole thing and consume all these when I get to it. But, my list is really long. And on to the next book. I love a good anthology. These collections are really better for books that are in a series, obviously. Or pretty short, and this is true for this one, which is The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is another book that I picked up from a Goodwill. This, if I'm not mistaken, was $2 at Goodwill, and it has all 5 novels and I think a short story. I've read the first book, and I've always wanted to read through the rest of the series, but it's just, I hate having little individual books, and having these collections like this are just great. I just love this. For Ted's Library. This is something that I probably won't get rid of because it has just so much content, and that's kind of what I look for in a book because I have very little space. So, on to the next book. This next book is from an author that I do like and unfortunately passed away not that long ago. I believe end of 2022. I've read, a few books. I have other books by his, but this is a collection that I contain, which is the Songs of Earth and Power by Greg Bear. It's kind of hard to see, but Greg Bear is a really interesting author. He has, I love music. I'm a musician. Anything that has to do with music being magic or something about a infinity concerto, I'm all about it. And, I think the only book that I've read by Greg Bear, and I hate to say this, is Heads. It's great. It's really short. I know it's not his best work, and I have other works of his. I'll kind of get into those when I talk more about Ted's Library, but on to the next book. some books feel like magic tomes, and that is true for this next book, which is Philip Pullman's Dark Materials trilogy. His Dark Materials, it's the trilogy. I was super excited when I saw this because I had a copy of The Golden Compass that I gifted to somebody because I picked up this enormous spell book of interesting literature. So I saw the movie when I was a kid. There's very interesting things about belief supposedly in this trilogy, and I'm really excited to check it out now that I have all three in one volume. On to the final book. And so here we are at the end of the video, the final book that I picked up from a Goodwill for very cheaply. All the books in this series have been less than $3 at Goodwill, okay? And I don't condone the way that Goodwill does business. Maybe there should be a little bit more regulation about how it works, but we're not trying to get into that. But I did pick up these nice books for pretty cheap. And if you're okay with giving money to Goodwill, it's an okay place to find books. Usually I'll find maybe one book at a Goodwill. I did walk away from one with like 14 books. So sometimes you get that crazy big jackpot, but on to the final book. And this is a classic, one of the people that I really need to read more of. And so I'm glad that I have the works of H.G. Wells in a nice padded leather-bound with gold leafing 2-column. Look at this 2-column. It has The Time Machine, The Island of Dr. Moreau, The Invisible Man, The War of the Worlds, The First Men in the Moon, and The Food of the Gods. I'm really excited to check out some of these. I've never read Time Machine. You know what? Come at me. Come at me in the comments. Don't be mean, please. But I know there's a lot of classic stuff that I haven't read, and I'm really excited to now be able to pick that up whenever I'm ready to do it. So thank you for watching these choice selections from Ted's library. I'll see you in the next video. Wait, hold on. There was a war on the whole world? Crazy.